So just like that, we're live, and
Oh,
thank you so
wow.
much for coming down. So you drove down to see me, which I appreciate.
I did. I got on the road at. So the way I was raised is that if you're on time, you're late, and if you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. So, with that in mind, I left the house at about 7:15 this morning. I actually got here at 11, and I went and had lunch at Subway and
Awesome.
made sure that I was going to be not late, but on time for you. So,
Well, you could have come down, you could have popped over. I was just hanging out.
well, I
And,
wasn't sure. So, and I knew I was hungry.
yeah.
I didn't want the microphone to pick up my grumbling stomach. So,
Okay, well, so I appreciate doing this in person because I know it's a bit of a pain in the ass to drive down. But I've done some remote, and they're so great. I'm always grateful for every time people make time to talk to me. But you actually driving down,
yeah, of course. Works
so
out so I can see my mother on the way back on Mother's Day. So it made sense to me to do the drive.
so it's nice to meet you because I saw and heard your name and saw it pop on some timesheets before I reached out to you. So I was so glad. Like we'd never, like literally, we're meeting for the first time now.
Yeah, yeah.
So who are you? For anyone who's never met you before.
Oh boy. All right. Well, my name is Charis. I'm a mom, and I'm a journeyman pipe fitter.
Awesome.
Last few years, I've been a materials coordinator and a project coordinator. And that's pretty much it.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in BC. My family moved from the Okanagan area to Red Deer when I was 7, and I grew up in Red Deer.
Oh, awesome. Sounds good. So my older brother Gunnar, I don't know if you ever met him. He lived in Red Deer for a while.
I'm not sure. I'm really excellent with faces. I'll never forget a face, but names escape me, and it's getting worse and worse the older I get.
Well, he looks like a big grizzly bear, and he has asked me to stop telling people that.
I'll look out for him. A big grizzly bear looking guy.
So how did you end up in the oil and gas industry?
It's kind of an interesting story. So I'm actually a very traditional person at heart.
Okay.
There were two things I knew from the time I was very small. One was that I wanted to drive. I always had the drive to drive, and I wanted to be a mummy more than anything.
Love that.
And I was with a person when I was quite young, 15. We got married and had 2 kids, and that was a disaster. So I left, and I met a man who worked in oil and gas. He was a scaffolder and quite a bit older than me, and he kind of rescued me from the situation I was in. And so he was doing the provider job, and I was doing the homemaker job, which I was very happy with. I was very content to be the person at home taking care of the home and the kids and doing all those very traditional female things. That's what I was built for. It's what I was designed for. And I was very content doing that. I was able to be home with my children for the first 10 years. And then due to really a health crisis, my husband was no longer able to fulfill the provider role. So I had to step into something. I was 30 years old with no marketable skills. I'd been a stay-at-home mom. I mean, there's a lot of skills that go into being a stay-at-home mom, but none of them are really marketable.
Tough to put them on a resume.
Yeah. And I wanted to be able to provide for my family the way my husband had been before he got ill. And I knew the only way to do that was to get into kind of the same spheres that he was working in. He always provided very, very well as a scaffolder. He was usually in supervision. He was 44 when we met. I was 22. So he had a lot of years of experience and was well established in his career. So he really did a good job of looking after us. And then when he got sick and the bottom fell out, I was like, well, crap, I'm gonna have to do something. And I decided to try to get my power engineering.
Cool.
I was homeschooling my kids, and so I figured I would do the power engineering as a CML student while I was homeschooling my children. And quick side story on that. So my oldest is autistic, and he was 11 years old when I was doing my power engineering. So power engineering, there's a lot of math, it's a lot of thermodynamic stuff. So I would write my equation out at the top of the page, and it would take me a whole page to figure out this equation. But my son would come and look, he used to drive me crazy, but I was also amazed by it. He would look over my shoulder, he would read the equation, and then he would pace for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. And then he would come back, grab the pencil out of my hand, pencil whip an answer at the bottom of the page, and it was typically very, very close to the answer that I got after doing the hard work. He was doing thermodynamics in his head. It was
That's wild.
Unbelievable.
So after this talk today, give me his details when you hire this kid.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. He's an entirely different person than anybody I've ever met. He is completely unique. But yeah, so I worked on my power engineering, and my husband was getting sicker and sicker, and it was like we got a terminal diagnosis. Actually, they said, you can try this experimental treatment. You've got 6 months. If you don't do it, you've got 6 months. If you do it, you might survive. And so I was like, oh man, I need to go faster than that. The power engineering wasn't going to get me to the field fast enough. So I actually hooked up with Women Building Futures out of Edmonton. Cool. I did their 6-week welding basics training. I did very, very well. I was kind of I was their top student for that group of people that went through. So I got put in front of all of their partner employers. Nice. And I got all 4 of the jobs that I interviewed for. So I picked the one that was of most interest to me, which was going up to a diamond mine called Gahcho Kué in the Northwest Territories. Okay. And that's where I started. No way. So I was 31 by the time I got up there, 30 or 31. And yeah, I was up there for 10 months. So I went from being home for every scrape, every snotty nose, every dinner, every bath time, everything, to being gone for 22 days. My youngest was 4, and I had a nanny at the house with the kids because my husband was too sick to be saddled with all the children. So, there was no infrastructure set up at the diamond mine. It literally popped up in the middle of nowhere. So we had 8 minutes a day or something to contact our families. So I would call home and talk to the kids, and then my connection time would be over, and that would be it. So my first time home, my 4-year-old played strange with me.
Okay, that must have been tough. Yeah,
he thought that I had died and that I was calling from heaven. So he played strange with me. I couldn't get him to talk to me or come near me. The nanny asked him about it, and she explained to me, he thought that you died and that you were calling to talk to him. But
God, the mind of a child.
Oh, he was really confused why I was back from heaven. And I sat down with him. I said, honey, Mommy didn't go to heaven. Mommy went to the Northwest Territories. Which, depending on who you are, that area might be heaven. I don't know. But
you could see it from there.
Yeah. No, it was a great experience. But being really honest, every night that I was away from my kids for the first at least year of working, I cried myself to sleep every single night because my heart was at home. And honestly, I still have those same values. I still feel like my place is at home. That's just not the way my life is. It's just not set up that way. For people whose lives are set up that way, they are extremely fortunate if they're able to kind of play the gender roles. I'm not saying a woman's place is in the kitchen and she can't ever leave, because obviously I'm not in my kitchen. I'm out making dough, and my husband is the one in the kitchen, right? But life ended up very, very differently for me than I had envisioned. I'm extremely grateful for it, that it's taken a different path, but it definitely hasn't been without its growing pains and without its sacrifices.
I would say you have a unique view because you're seeing this industry from the other side of the lens. Because I always talk to, it's still very much a male-dominated industry. Yeah. And when I say industry, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about mining, pipeline, forestry, It's still very much still male dominated in the field, and you were on the other side of that. And I can only imagine how hard it was, because you wanted to be that mom. You said you were that person, and to go to do what you got to do and try to somehow magically explain to a child, no, I'm doing this for you. I don't even know how you have those conversations.
Well, and it was hard for me, and it was hard for my kids. But you know who I think it was actually the hardest for? My husband.
Interesting.
Because men are hardwired. You guys are hardwired to be the providers and the protectors of your home. Because of illness, he wasn't able to do those things. And he actually, he is fully retired now. He had some really difficult challenges following his COVID vaccinations. So now he's been diagnosed with cerebrovascular disease with dementia effects. So he's not able to work. So he is the homemaker. Like we have completely reversed roles, and that really plays on a man's mind. For sure. And on a man's identity, not being able to do those things that men do. Those are very manly things, going out and earning the money and looking after the family in that way, and
for sure, and
having your house looked after for you by your wife. Those are all things that are kind of a man's right, or I don't know, right or privilege, or but that's what men are built for. They're built for that.
Yeah, you're built for it. It's innate.
Yeah. And so that was a very, very trying time for us when I initially went to work. The first few years of me being at work were very, very difficult for everybody, and for different reasons. But I really, looking back, I can understand how it was extremely hard for my husband to not be able to be the provider that he had been. So
well, I would say, because it is a health issue, I mean, this industry is devastating on relationships anyway, but now you're adding in a total new element, which is, again, other articles I've read, when it comes to health issues, including terminal diagnoses, unfortunately, yeah, it can wreak havoc on people's relationships. So you double down on those. So
yeah, we don't do anything in half measures in my house, I guess. And then we had another real tragedy happen in 2020. It was actually Father's Day. I was out in Regina working. My husband was at home with the kids and the nanny and everything. He was making pizza, I think, for Father's Day for everybody. And he looked out our side window, our patio door window, and the fence was on fire. And he went and got the kids, he got our nanny, got the dogs out of the house, went next door to the neighbors, got the neighbors out of their house, and both houses were completely destroyed.
You've got to be kidding.
We lost everything. In 2020, of course, we were right smack in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it was a real disaster. We lost everything. Like, the fire burned so hot it actually popped the concrete foundations. Like, it was a complete scrap and rebuild. And just 3 weeks before the house went up, we had actually poured the pool walls. My husband and I decided to tackle our backyard and do something big and put in a concrete pool. So we had done all of the work, the excavation, the hauling the dirt away, the formwork, the rebar, the concrete, the everything. Just poured the walls, and then 3 weeks later the house burnt down, and that property sat for 13 months with no activity on it. And that was extremely, extremely difficult because I was stuck in Regina. So that was June 21st. I wasn't able to get home till almost the end of July. But my life had blown apart. My parents had taken 2 of my kids. One of my kids went to stay with his paternal grandparents. My husband took the trailer, and he was staying somewhere else. The dogs were somewhere. Like, the family just shattered. And I felt like I kind of had become a little bit of a cliche, in industry. There's lots of guys out there who will tell you about the nasty ex-wife who's taken all their money for child support and blah, blah, blah. I actually have one of those stories because of the fire. So my oldest and my youngest and I went and stayed at my parents' place in Red Deer. My middle child opted to go stay with his biological father's parents, so his paternal grandparents. So my ex gave up his location where he was, moved into his parents' basement, gave up his 6-figure job as a journeyman electrician, took a job at Lowe's stocking shelves, so he drove down his obligation, put himself in the same address as my son, sued me for child support.
Oh my God.
And he won. Yeah, there was so it was just a disaster. My lawyer didn't show up for court on time, and the judge was mad about that, and so it tainted the whole thing, and I ended up owing this man who had never paid child support before. We'd done a round of stuff, a couple of years before that, where he was forced to pay because he came at me for full custody, so I countersued for child support. And as soon as the fire happened, he just took advantage of the disaster in our lives and chose that time to exact his revenge or whatever. And the house was rebuilt in about 13, 14 months. We were back in. So my son moves home with me, but in the court system, Biodad is listed as the primary guardian. So I'm sending child support to this man who's living in his parents' basement, who no longer has my son because he's come home with me. Yeah, it was a disaster.
So as wild as this, I've heard so many wild stories, exactly what you're telling.
Yeah.
It's usually from the reverse,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But some stories where I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I almost don't even believe it. And it occurs to me, because I've talked to so many friends about it now, like, there is literally a flaw in our system.
Yeah.
When it comes to this, because everyone thinks, oh yeah, it's so simple, it's math, child support, that's how it works. And it's like, you know what, it's so much more nuanced than that, and so much more plays into it. And
well, and I can empathize, previous to that whole situation happening with my ex, I could listen to the guy's stories and be like, that is insane, and I'm so sorry you're going through that, and all that. But when this whole thing shook out and I literally had lost everything, and that's when he went for the jugular. And he went for the jugular. And I could empathize with these guys. I wasn't just listening to their stories and being like, oh man, that sucks. I was like, yes, I know what this feels like because I'm doing this. And, they put a lien on my tax returns. And so for 2 years, like they just swooped my whole tax return, and because I owed all this money it was a very expensive situation all around. And my son, the middle son, is 19 now, and we talked about it a little while ago, and he says, I made a mistake. And I'm like, yeah? He's like, yeah, how much money did that whole thing cost? And I said, it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And he said, it was a pretty big mistake, eh? I try to not put that on him.
No,
because
you can't, yeah.
Because he was 14. He didn't want to do what he was told. He wanted to make up his own mind, and I raised my kids to be free thinkers. As much as that irks me sometimes, they are free thinkers, and they will not go along with anything just because somebody says you need to do this. They challenge and question everything, which as adults I think is great. Trying to raise children like that sometimes can be frustrating, but ultimately I'm very happy that that's the kind of people that they are. So
I would say you're like a walking testament of, the industry always talks about, oh yeah, it's good money and blah, blah, blah. And that's literally one of the first things people always bring up. And the second thing is, yeah, we earn it. And because we don't want to advertise all these family challenges, these relationship challenges. It's devastating your body because you eat bad or drink too much and the mental health issues are all just under the surface, and you're like a walking testament to that. How did you get through it? The obvious challenges are one thing, but how did you look after yourself during this, all that was going on?
Oh gosh. My main coping strategy is to remind myself that everybody who's dear to me in my life, my children and my husband, they all count on me. So when I feel like I'm close to a breakdown, like I feel like I'm close to the edge, I just tell myself, I don't have time for a mental breakdown now. I will schedule this for a later date, because right now I've got stuff in front of me to do. So I just always, I've promised myself that there will be a point where I get to take a mental break and I get to have that meltdown, or I get to have that whatever, but it's just not now, because now there's work to be done. And that day is coming. I'm not sure when I'm going to get it. I'll get it eventually, but for now I need to keep my eye on the prize, which is building as much of a life as I can for my kids, and making sure that they're provided for, that they're well looked after. I'm heavily insured. If anything ever should happen to me, I need to know that there are systems in place to look after my children, and if my husband outlives me, my husband as well. So I'm highly driven and highly motivated to keep persevering, because I know they count on me. If I didn't have my kids, my life would look entirely different. I don't think it would be nearly as bright. They are the absolute best parts of who I am.
I love that.
Absolute best parts. They are the best things I will ever be involved in.
Oh, that's good. Well, I can tell you from a kid perspective, because even when I reach out to my mom today to say, hey Mom, happy Mother's Day, and I always try to tell her, if there's any goodness in me, it came from you. Something about being a mom, and I know not everyone has a mom, not everyone has a good mom, but I certainly was fortunate enough. And to hear the way you talk about your kids, I think, man, if you had to have some encouragement in the background to keep you going every day, that's those kids for sure.
Yeah, they're my reason for everything I do. And when I find that when I make decisions outside of thinking what's best for them, that's usually when I mess up. When I don't have them as my focus, when I don't have them as my reason, that's when I make mistakes. That's when I make poor decisions. So I have to keep them kind of always at the front of my mind. My mother was very, very influential in my life, in who I've become. My mom and my dad both were very, very hard workers. My dad went back to school with two little, I have a little brother who's also a pipe fitter. He got into it way before I did, but excuse me, sorry. My mom and my dad both worked very hard. My dad went to Caribou College in Kamloops to get his respiratory therapist designation. So that was hard work, having, being in college and having two little guys and all that. And then my mom worked tirelessly. I remember we had a large dining room table, about probably 2/3 the size of this table. And most of my memories of her, once we moved to Red Deer, revolved around her sitting at the end of the table with stacks of books and paperwork around her. She worked in the bank. I think she started in RBC and then she was in Scotiabank. And she got so many designations and certificates and stuff. She put in hours and hours and hours, and she sacrificed going to lots of things that she wanted to do because she was bettering herself. And I know her whole motivation for bettering herself was to give my brother and I the best that she could possibly give us. So she really has been probably one of the strongest role models for me. Her work ethic is unmatched. And I work with some very, very hard-working people. That woman is motivated and driven, and she knows what she wants. And she was able to actually retire from the bank, I think at 57 or 58, and she was able to walk away with a very nice retirement package. She that woman has earned everything that she's gotten.
What is she doing now? Like, you can't turn off that work ethic and that schedule and that drive. Like, you can't turn it off, and even in retirement, I wouldn't think.
Well, they take, my mom and my dad take traveling very, very seriously.
Okay.
So they are very serious travelers. They're serious divers. They are serious golfers. My mom is a very serious gardener.
Work hard, play hard.
Oh yeah, no, she definitely. I think that she is enjoying her retirement, and is just finding ways to fill her life with different activities that she enjoys. And my dad has his rep pilot's license, so he's got a couple of planes that he likes to fly, and he likes to hunt, and so yeah, they're just really enjoying their retirement. I actually hope that by the time they're gone, they've got nothing to pass on.
Awesome.
I hope that they just spend it all and just live their lives and see the world and do all the things that they had always hoped to do.
You told her that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want them to blow it all before
Awesome.
they go. I've got my own money. I don't need them to pass any on.
Where are they living now?
They're in Red Deer still.
Oh, what a gift.
Yeah, they're still in Red Deer. We moved into that house when I was in grade 5 or grade 6, and our old house was so close. I remember carrying boxes from my room, from the old house over to the new house. And yeah, no, they're still there. It's a beautiful, beautiful property, and yeah, they've got a beautiful life, I think.
No, I like to hear that.
Yeah.
As far as working out of town, have you found a good? We always talk about the community and oil and gas and pipeline, and have you found a good support network when you're out on these jobs in the past?
Well, I find that every time you go to a new project, you obviously have to. I think that you have to start from the ground up and rebuild a community, because you meet different people, and it's a different mix of people every project you go to. So yeah, I definitely establish connections with people on the different projects that I'm on, and then you might not see those people for 2 or 3 or 6 years, but you come across them again, and then you've already kind of got a little piece of your community back for the next one. There are some people who I'm really excited when I get to see them again, when I know that they're going to be on the same project as me, because they're people that I've come to trust, people who I count as friends. So it's always nice to see familiar faces. I have a lot of anxiety when I start a new job. It can be, I don't want to understate this. I guess I don't want to overstate it either, but it can be very difficult walking into a room for the first time. And lots of times being the only female in the room and not knowing anybody. That's a very intimidating sort of situation. And my anxiety about it, I'm not sure, maybe I'm just more aware of that anxiety the older I get, but because there's, you have to, because you do have to establish new relationships, and you do have to do the things to get to know people, and it just seems like a lot of work and a lot of investment, and it's like,
again,
do I really want to do this? Because in 6 months' time, I'm gonna look at these people as my kids, because I'm older than a lot of them, and then we're gonna have to say goodbye, and it's gonna suck, and so doing the whole thing, getting attached to people, and then when the project is over, it's like, well, see ya, and then it's just over. It's just done. So that part is hard. I remember when I was up at Gahcho Kué, I definitely was the only female in the field up there. Like, there was no other women. And I think there was an HR lady, and there were like the camp staff, right? But other than that, like in my lunch trailer, there was probably 120 guys and me. And I got hauled out of the field very, very quickly. I'd only been up there for about a few months, and I got hauled into the piping super's office. And he said, well, I need some help in the office. And I had lost my mind. I went up one side of him and down the other. I said, just because I'm the only skirt in the room does not mean I want to be in the office. I'm here to work in the field. And he's like, whoa, hold on. And so he told me some of the feedback he'd gotten from the people in the field, and they were calling me Pockets at that time because I was on the hydro crew, but I knew nothing. So I was teaching myself about fittings. And then, like, after hours, I would go to the sea cans and look at the fittings and figure out how things went together. And then the next day, you know, they'd be asking for like a 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch bushing or a coupling or whatever, and I would pull it out of my pocket. So the guys started calling me Pockets.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. No one could say my name, right? Everyone mispronounced my name, and that's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
How long have you been Charis?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I've been called David Hermanson so many times. I've been wondering, am I pronouncing it wrong?
Yeah, no, it's an ongoing thing, but so everyone called me Pockets, and then when the super called me into the office and explained that he wanted me in there, and he heard the feedback from the field that I, you know, attention to detail and hardworking and all that, I was like, oh, okay, that doesn't sound so bad. So I became their quantity surveyor on paper is what my role was, but I really just did whatever I needed to do in that office to kind of help things flow. So Paul brought me in front of the whole room of pipe fitters, and he introduced me as the pipe fitting mom. This is Mom. This is the pipe fitting mom. If you need anything related to pipe fitting, you talk to Mom.
I love that. What did you think of it?
Well, I've been Mom ever since. I tell people, you've got 3 chances, and if you mess up my name 3 times, it is forever Mom. And I will never answer for you for anything other than Mom. So say it properly or call me Mom. And a lot of people just opt to call me Mom because it's easier.
Oh my God, I love that. Yeah, some nicknames, it's funny in our industry, you know, either if you don't have a nickname or you have one, you just hope it's not for a bad reason, you know.
Yeah.
Because some of those bad nicknames linger around.
Oh yeah, some of them definitely stick. I've had a few less than nice ones, but there was one project where the guys started calling me the Mule, and I couldn't figure out what was going on for about a week. I'm like, what is going on? But one of the guys was an MMA fighter, and him and I had been working out in the gym together. I was throwing punches, and he was giving me some tips and whatnot. And then shortly after that, the guy started calling me the Mule, and I'm like, is it because I'm stubborn? Like, what? Why are you calling me the Mule? I'm really confused. And they're like, no, he says that you hit like a mule.
So, that's a compliment.
Yeah, so I was okay with that one. That one was all right, yeah.
So are you working in the field now? No. You're in the office?
So for the first time in my career, I'm actually home every night, which is awesome. It's a Monday to Friday gig out of the Spruce Grove fabrication shop for Sir Harris Murphy. And it's an adjustment, obviously, right? Like when I'm away on projects, I'm gone for an extended period of time, and then I'm home for a bit. And I've always kind of felt like a guest stepping back into my life when I come home, because everything carries on without you when you're not there. You know, bills accumulate, children grow, the grass grows, all kinds of things happen while you're not there. Yeah. You've just exited your life for a period of time, and you come back in and you don't necessarily know where you fit or how you fit.
Well, there's a schedule usually happening, yeah.
Yeah, and so you have to kind of blend back into it. So it really makes you kind of feel like just a special guest in the house for, or maybe a not so special guest, maybe an unwelcome guest sometimes, right? Yeah. But being able to touch base with my kids every night and being able to be there on the weekends, especially now so my husband is dealing with dementia, right? Because of the cerebrovascular disease. So the kids, he's still fairly high functioning, but you know, the kids do need to kind of keep an eye on him sometimes and watch him in the kitchen and check in with him, because I think depression is a part of it as well. And so they definitely are more in kind of caretaker roles for their dad, and they're not caretakers, they're kids. You know, there's a lot put on them, and they're not really necessarily up for it, or they certainly didn't ask for it. Neither did my husband, obviously, but we're all kind of in a difficult situation. We're making it work, but it's certainly not ideal. I don't want my husband to be going through what he goes through, and the aggravation, and looking at his kids sometimes and not remembering their names, and that's hard, right? It's hard. So for me to be able to be home every night and to touch base and just have more of a connection with the kids, it's a gift. I've always been extremely grateful to be employed. I've been extremely grateful to have a job. I don't feel like a job is my right. I feel like it's a privilege to be employed.
I like that.
And I'm extremely grateful every opportunity I get. But this job with Charis Murphy, I can't even explain what it means to me to be able to be home with my kids and to be able to be around just at this point in our lives when it seems like kind of my presence is maybe more needed than before. So I'm extremely grateful.
Awesome.
Yeah, extremely grateful.
I know your kids are still at home, all of them?
Yeah, okay. So my 21-year-old, he's very high functioning. He's autistic, but he has expressed, he's so pragmatic, and he's so introspective. We talked about it, and he said it doesn't even make fiscal sense for me to leave, because I have everything that I need here. All my needs are looked after. I'm in a position where I can help look after the house and look after Dad, and eventually you're going to need to be looked after. You raised me, and I'm just going to stay because I need to pay it back.
I love that.
And so he's just like, there's no reason for me to leave. And the other two are same thing. The 19-year-old and the 15-year-old, they've got no real desire to leave, and I've got no desire for them to leave either. I feel like I know it's a good thing for children to go out from their homes and to go out and find their own way. I understand that, but for our family, for the dynamic that we have, I'm perfectly okay with them staying as long as they feel they need to. And when they're ready to go, they'll go.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I know exactly where I was on my 14th birthday. I know where I was on my 16th birthday. I know where I was on my 18th birthday. I was getting my learner's license, my driver's license, and my 18th birthday, I moved out of my parents' place. I could not wait to leave. I could not wait for those kinds of independent activities, you know, those steps into adulthood. My kids are not bothered by any of that.
I wonder, it'd be interesting to talk to your mom and dad, because they probably were sad to see you go.
I don't know. There's probably mixed feelings. There's probably mixed feelings. For me, at the time when I left, I was not sad to go. I couldn't wait. But there is also, I was 18, and, you know, there's difficulties with teenagers, and they think they're so smart, and I certainly thought that I was smart, and realized just how smart my mom and dad were when my first one was born. When I was 21, I was like, oh, my mom and dad actually know a lot that I didn't give them credit for. So, but yeah, with my kids, I'm content to have them stay. We're also living in a very different time. When I was 18, I could have a minimum wage job, have a car, be able to afford rent, and be able to afford to eat.
Yeah, those days are behind us.
Right.
For sure.
So if my children were to go out and get minimum wage jobs, you know, entry-level jobs, they would have to make the decision between paying rent or paying for gas or paying for food, or there's just not enough. They would not make enough to be able to make it on their own. So it doesn't make, my son was right, it doesn't make financial sense for them to try and make their own households when the household we've got is perfectly functional and perfectly fine just the way it is. So.
And loving and accepting, because again, there are homes that maybe aren't that way, and
Yeah.
they would get kind of, I don't want to say shuffled out, but
Yeah. I think I've made it I've made it pretty easy on my kids. I think the kids have gone through and experienced so much ugly stuff that I felt like was out of my control, that the things I could control, I tried to really be soft for them, and that might have coddled them a little bit, but
I don't know. I've had this conversation with so many friends, and within reason, in varying degrees, everyone says mixed feelings when the kids leave home, and because you're proud of them, and you know this is part of it. Our job as parents is to let them find their own wings and kind of move on. But at the same token, I dropped one of my middle kid off at university last fall, and I was giving him a hug as dropping off at campus because he was staying on residence, and
cool.
And I remember giving him a hug. Oh, I love you, so proud of you. And I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I can start crying. And I was like, I love you. And I pinned her out of there because I'm like, oh my God, I love these kids so much.
Yeah, and just the uncertainty of of them being out on their own, and how are they going to function out there, and are they going to be okay, and have I equipped them enough, and
and you have all those thoughts going through your head, and we always say, we think we've raised good people, so we hope they've had the judgment, and are they going to fall down and screw up? For sure. I mean, that's part of life too. That's how you learn, and we just hope it's never too bad.
Yeah. My kids are intensely interesting people. My middle kid, actually all of them have talent, have artistic talent and musical talent that did not come from me. Like I don't know where these kids got the talent that they've got, but the middle one has been working on designing his own video game for the last almost 4 years. So he's taught himself how to code, how to animate, and so he puts out videos on YouTube on a regular basis of his video game development, how it's coming. He's colorblind, so my youngest one helps out with the coloring schematics, and the oldest one is creating things for the game as well. So they're all kind of collaborating on this massive project. That was kind of the birth child of my middle guy. And I got them to design, I contract, so I got them to design my company logo. And so that's my brand, is the IDZ Enterprises Inc. with my son's character from his video game in the center of it. So
very, very cool.
Yeah, IDZ is for Isaac Dallas Zephaniah.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's what it is. So they're neat people. I really am intrigued by who they're becoming. Frustrated sometimes because they're kids, but intrigued for sure.
What a gift being a parent, eh? I know not everyone's supposed to be a parent, and I'm pretty confident not everyone should be a parent based on some of the people I've met in my life, and worse, not everyone gets the chance.
Yeah.
Even when they want to, but I always say, I'm so grateful. What a fun ride this has been.
Yeah, absolutely. How many kids do you have?
We got 3, so we've got 2 of them out of the home, and little girl's graduating high school in a month or whatever it is.
Wow.
So she's going to university, and it goes quick. So all of a sudden, just like that, we're going to be empty nesters, and Marie and I are like, well, we feel like a couple kids, so how does, what's going on here? How is it possible that those 2 crazy kids can have 3 kids out of the home,
Fun. So you're about to move into a new chapter of your lives then?
For sure. But again, great. Marie and I have an awesome relationship. It's so good. And we built our relationship about me being away. Yeah. So that we've known each other so long and have been together so long. Our relationship formed around that, which I would say, not to say we haven't had challenges in the context of working away and stuff, because it is tough, but it's different, I'd say, for us. If you come into the industry later on in your life where you don't realize, hey, being away is good money, but it's hard. A lot of relationships don't make it through that. And we've been fortunate enough. So, like I said, it's interesting for me to talk to you because I'm used to talking to you and not hearing typically the woman's perspective, but you're sharing that perspective from one of the guys out in the field,
Well, and the wild thing about it is, there were so many things I didn't understand when I was a stay-at-home mom. And, my husband would be away, and, or, we would get together, my family, so my brother and my husband would be talking about work stuff, because they worked in similar environments. My brother was a steady Eddie guy out at Nova Chemicals in Joffrey for like 13 years. So, and my husband always worked in those kinds of settings, different kinds of plants and whatever. And so they would be talking about things at work, about the heights and about dropped objects and about all this stuff. And I was blissfully unaware of what they were talking about. I had no concept until I went to work and I understood, and it really gave those conversations that I'd been hearing for years, gave them some context. And then I was terrified, because then I understood that my husband and my brother were talking about situations at work.
Oh my God, life or death.
That can flip on a dime. Like it takes literally no time for absolute disaster to strike. And so to hear people that I love talking about situations that they got out by the skin of their teeth kind of situation, that definitely, that brought a whole new level of anxiety unlocked. Absolutely. But the other thing that happened for me once I was the one working away, one of the frequent arguments that I would have with my husband when I was the stay-at-home mom was, you're gone for 2 weeks at work, and all you have to do is go to work, and, you don't even have to clean up your room, you don't have to cook for yourself, and you come home and you don't want to do anything, and I've been with the kids this whole time, and, that argument that every couple in this industry has this argument. I finally understood what it meant to be away, and what it means to be away is to step away from the people that you care the most about in this world. You leave them. You completely leave them. Yes, you don't have to cook for yourself. You don't necessarily have to clean for yourself. Your only job is to show up to work. Yes, that is true. But what people don't tell you about is when you're back in your camp room at night, or your whatever accommodation you're in, and all you can think about is, what's my family doing right now?
For sure.
What are my kids doing? What's my spouse doing? Do they miss me? Are they having family dinner? Are they playing a game together and I'm not there? And I wonder what my kids are saying. And it is so mentally and emotionally challenging that it is exhausting. So coming home from that stress of not being with them, you come home and you need to de-stress. You need to just be around them, and to just be in the same space as them is soothing. But you do need to relax from that, because it's so challenging to be away, that to just get to be home and be present is about all you can manage, right?
No, you're articulating some things that a lot of people talk about all the time, but you're articulating it very well, because it's hard to explain to people. Life happens in small moments. Life is not taking your kids on a trip to West Edmonton Mall.
No.
It's sitting around watching TV, or having a laugh, or your kid telling you a funny story at dinner. And if you're that person, that spouse that's not around because you're working away, you miss that.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize you miss it. That's the shitty thing.
Well, because they're small, our kids develop so quickly, but they develop in small increments. So watching your child learn something, it's a magical thing. Being able to watch them put things together, you can see the little gears turning. But those are a minute to minute thing. They're not something that you can get that only happen on your 4 days off. It happens consistently. One of the things that I understand, I've definitely, so I have all boys, and that's not actually true. I have my stepdaughter. So my husband has a son and a daughter from a previous marriage. So I got my girl.
You got your girl.
Yeah, and I adore my stepdaughter. I'm extremely grateful to her that I get to be grandma to her children, and so that was not accurate. I'm not a boy mom, but the ones at home are all boys. And working in industry, I'm around primarily men. And what really kind of where my heart is men's health, men's mental health, mental and emotional health. You guys are expected to carry so much and just shut up and do your job and not talk about it and be men and sort your problems. And there's really not a whole lot of space in industry for men to be, the broken, vulnerable, open. We talk about it, like we have Mental Health Month, and we have different tailgate topics about, if you're feeling sad, reach out to somebody. But we still have so much disaster and tragedy in our industry, and I think I don't even know how to solve it. I'm just always I'm keenly aware that there's a societal expectation on men that is probably more prominent in our industry, because there's a lot of manly men in industry who can't really articulate how they're actually feeling about stuff, because they don't know how, they don't have the skills to share it, or if they do have the skills to share it, they're not sure who to talk to. And that's hard. That's hard for me to watch, guys that I always I watch the guys sometimes, and I wonder if there's something going on. So I try to make myself available and open, and hopefully I've worked beside lots of guys who will, once you start working with them, they'll open up and they'll start talking, and they'll share things kind of off the cuff, just kind of as you're working. It's really deep stuff that they're struggling with that they don't really know of any other outlet, so they just try to talk about it like it's just a normal thing. But this is men's mental health that we're not that we're ignoring it, but it's just, industry is such a difficult place to maintain that mental health, right? To maintain that open dialogue.
I think we're moving in the right direction, I would say, in a lot of different companies. But I've talked to enough people working pipeline that they said they're not comfortable phoning the 1-800 numbers, more because, well, who the hell's on the other line? And it's confidential, which is fine, but they're not pipeliners, so do they understand actually what we're struggling with? And they said they're more comfortable talking to people. And even during some meetings we had last summer, they said they're more comfortable sitting around in a private room with some pipeliners, and even though it's pretty vulnerable and some tears and stuff, they said they're more comfortable doing that than reaching out to a confidential line.
Yeah.
And they said part of the reason they don't speak up generally is because they want to be counted on the crew. And it was great, actually, because there's women and men in these groups we had last summer. But they said they want to be counted on. Like, it's you build really strong relationships around these crews, and you want to be counted on. And sometimes they say, even if they are struggling, they don't want to, and because they love these guys, they don't want to make it weird. And these are some of the words that have been spoken to me. They don't want it to make it awkward and stuff. So instead of, they say nothing.
Because they feel like they owe it to each other to be strong and to...
You want to be counted on, be one of the guys and stuff. So even by us having this conversation today, my hope is that, just by the act of talking about it, it just slowly over time will make it more comfortable, more normal, and people will hopefully reach out to, I saw Charis, and she's a soft landing. And I'm always curious, is it the fact that even you're female, maybe that makes you more approachable somehow? Like I said, not maybe because you're a mom. Do you have something about your presence makes people feel comfortable, I
have been told that I'm a bit like a nagging mom sometimes at work.
What a compliment.
I do get that a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know. I tend to see the people that I work with as people that I'm responsible for very quickly. I don't know, I take on like a sense of responsibility for the people that I work with, and I take it seriously. I take my job seriously. I take the connection seriously, and I have this sense that, you know, I'm there to look out for the guys that I work with, and so I try to be available and be understanding, and let guys know that I'm there. So I felt really fortunate with the people that I've gotten to work with too. I've worked with some really, really, really talented people, some really great guys, and I've made some really good friendships. So, but I always, right from the word go, I had this idea in my head that I had to prove that I deserved to be there. Where I was, I had to prove that I deserved to be there. So because of that, my goal was always to, I always had to work as hard or harder, you know, than the guys, just to prove that I belonged.
I've literally, those almost exact words were echoed to me a couple days ago at this table by Simone Chapizia, and she was saying the same thing when she broke out as a pipeliner laboring on a coating crew. There is that extra element of women have in order to fit in, because you can't just, you won't be accepted, you'll never be accepted as a pipeliner until you've been at it a while, but it's almost like there is the expectation you need to go above and beyond for some reason, and I don't know why that is.
I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's just internal, if it's just an internal drive, or if there's a bit of an external push as well. I definitely have come across guys who have just outright said to me, no snatch in the patch. Like, we don't want you here. And so definitely in those situations, I had to work twice as hard as any of the guys to prove that I belonged there. Now that I've phased out of the field and I'm not on the tools really anymore, it's different. I can't like work that physically hard anymore because I'm just in a different role, right? So I struggle sometimes to be able to prove that, you know, I'm working hard and I deserve to be here, because working hard was always like cutting piles in the mud and like hauling 40, 50 pounds of whatever.
But writing a report for 8 hours, you can't see it or feel it.
Yeah, it's a different kind of hard, right? Yeah. But once in a while, like about once a year, I'll take a shutdown. I'll go do something where I can be on the tools again, and awesome. I have a lot of fun, and I just give her hell for however long I'm there, and then I'm like, okay. Then I go back to doing a materials coordinator position or a project coordinator position. So
I like that you're enjoying what you're doing now. It makes me happy.
Yeah, like I said, it's a totally different. This is a totally different life than I thought I was going to live, and I still, at the end of the day, would like to be the homemaker. That's the ideal. But I've had to give up my ideal for my reality. And my reality is that I'm the provider. That's the reality. And it's not a terrible reality.
No,
it's not.
And you have the gift to do it. Because there's even some people right now who I've talked to a lot in the last year who haven't been able to work. And like I said, whether you're a guy or a girl, you know, we all don't want to admit it, but we do find a sense of purpose in working and providing and all these kind of things. And when that's taken away from you, it's tough on families for sure.
Yeah, I had a situation January 1st of 2023. I decided to take my kids out tobogganing, as you do, because you know,
kids.
And so we went out tobogganing. We just went out to the overpass turning into Wabamun there. I was with my middle one and my youngest, and of course I'm a boy mom. I'm competitive. If they're doing crazy things, I got to keep up with them, right? So they were taking all these jumps and doing all this stuff, and I'm pretty sure that I concussed myself earlier in the day going over a jump, and I said to myself, this is the last one. I'm going to do the last slide, and then I'm done. Oh, was I done? I put my foot out at the last minute because I got scared. I didn't want to go over the jump. So I put my heel down, and my whole force of my body slammed against my leg, and my leg basically went.
Oh.
And I shattered my leg. Shattered my leg. I went into shock fairly quickly. I couldn't move, but I couldn't not move. It was the most incredible pain. And I tried to get up to walk myself to the car, and my foot
Oh my God.
was on the side like this, and I couldn't. So my son and somebody at the hill got me to the vehicle, and I drove me and the kids home, and I was just going to head inside and put an ice pack on it. And my husband came out to the car, and my foot was cocked out to the side. He said, "No, we're going to the hospital." And so went to the hospital, sat there for probably 8 hours, and then I got in and they took an x-ray. And then all of a sudden I'm getting heated blankets, and nurses are coming in and doctors are coming in, and everyone's, "Are you okay? How you doing?" Finally a nurse comes in, and I said, "What is going on? Like, what's with all the fanfare? What's going on?" She says, "Have you seen your x-ray yet?" I went, "No." "Oh, let me show you your x-ray." So she pulled up my x-ray, and she's like, "We don't understand how you're still conscious." Because it was so badly broken, like they thought I'd be gone, right? But that obviously put me off work for a while.
Yeah.
It was a few months. Fortunately, I had taken my computer home for Christmas break, so I could do some work from home. I was in a materials coordinator position at the time,
Yeah.
and I was doing 8 hours a day on the computer and whatever, but it was depressing. It was hard because I did not have the ability to provide the way I had been. And I didn't feel like I was actually contributing anything valuable to site because I wasn't there. And I got very depressed because I wasn't fulfilling my role. I wasn't filling my function. And it was a difficult thing. I will never go tobogganing again. I know that, but I never want to be in the position where I want to work and I can't. That's torturous.
Well, I think we all get more risk averse as we get older. That's just human nature. But yeah, did you learn your lesson about trying to be a good mom and having fun?
Yeah, I have to drive over that overpass every time I go home, and my heart rate speeds up a little bit every single time, and because it just scares me so bad. Like it was supposed to be fun, and it was it was this fun thing I was doing with my kids, and on a dime it turned, and it's changed my life. Like I have bone pain all the time now, right? And it's kind of like what can happen at work, where things can go south so quickly, and it can change your life forever, sometimes in small ways, but sometimes in not so small ways. And it was a hard one. It was a hard one to do. And like even now, like I have bone pain still in my leg that just throbs almost constantly, right? So yeah, I don't know.
Getting old before your time.
No.
One thing I always like to ask people, like, if you had to provide any young person or young family contemplating a career in the energy industry, knowing all that you know, which is to be working away from home, health issues, relationship challenge, blah, 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 what advice would you give them, knowing, I guess it could be a good living, I guess, at the end of the day. What advice would you give them?
Communication. Communication can solve 99% of any problem. Like good communication, and communication isn't something that everybody just has it mastered. People figure because you can talk, you've mastered communication, but communication has to be really intentional. You need to be very proactive in your communication, but also in your listening, setting parameters, talking to people who have more experience than you, like figuring out from other people. The one thing, knowing what I know now, that I would, if I could go back, I would never argue with my husband about, was his contribution level when he gets home from work. If I understood back then what it was like for him when he was gone, as I do now, there's no way that I would have been ragging on him about his lack of contribution when he was home, because it's a non-starter. Like that argument, there is never any winner in that argument, and it just breeds resentment. So yeah, my main piece of advice would be really good communication. And if you need to call in an interpreter to help figure out what each side is saying, then absolutely do that. And then just decide, I guess, for a family, decide, how much time are we willing to give this industry before we say, like, do we want to do this for 10 years, or do we want to do this for 5 years, or is this a lifelong career that we want to pursue? And I would say have regular meetings about, okay, this is what's working, this is what's not working, and just keep good communication up. Everything that I'm thinking about right now would have been way easier if I had just communicated more clearly with my husband and with my kids.
Yeah, I don't know. Was there people to give us this kind of advice when we were coming into the industry? I don't really know. I don't think so, but.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think so, because I think so much I had to figure out by actually being in industry. I didn't really get a whole lot of heads up, so I didn't really understand it until I was in it. WBF did a good job of kind of preparing me for being in a male-dominated industry. There are definitely industry experts that were teachers there at the time that could speak to their experience of what it was like working in industry and working away. But we didn't really get into like what family dynamics could look like for people who are working away. So yeah, I feel like I just had to figure it out. I think all of us really, the only thing we can do is figure it out.
Yeah.
And but we can't figure it out in isolation. Like, we really need each other. I think we need to draw on each other's experiences, and we also really need involvement from our spouses to talk about the issues and not to be afraid. I don't know why we're so afraid to communicate with each other, but a lot of people find clear, concise communication very difficult.
I can only share what, some of the conversations I've had with people in the past, and when it comes to working away from home and how hard it is. And a lot of people share that, it's, being honest is tough anyway in life, but being really honest with the people you love and care about the most, it's almost impossible, because you do care about them so much, and you don't want to make them worry, and you don't want them to cause concern, and you don't want to. That's why, you bury the hard days rather than share them, because you don't want them to worry.
Especially men. Especially men, because they can't share, like we were talking about earlier. For some reason, guys maybe they've never been invited to share. That could be a big part of it, because as a wife and as a mother, I just expected my husband to be the provider. I expected that. I expected him to go to work. I expected him to make money. I expected him to look after our family. And I never gave him the space to say, hey, babe, tell me how you're doing. Like, how are things going, like, emotionally? Like, how are you handling being away from the kids? It never even crossed my mind that there might be a mental health component, that he needed an outlet and that I needed to be his soft place. I never even considered that. And so I would say for wives and moms and stuff who are at home and are married to somebody who works away, have you given your husband the space? Have you laid it out for him that, hey, I know you carry burdens that I will never understand, but I want you to feel comfortable to tell me about it. Because you guys do. You men carry burdens that us women will never understand. You're hardwired to take care of things and to take on the mantle of things that we just can't I mean, it goes both ways, obviously, right? We bear a lot of burdens that men don't get as well, but for the man working away, I think it's extremely important if he's got a wife at home or partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, that partner says, hey, I don't know what all you're carrying, but I want to know, and this is a safe space where you can tell me about it. Because I find if guys don't have a safe space to share kind of where they're at with a loved one, it's really easy to turn to alcohol when you're gone because you're bored or your buddies are drinking or drugs or whatever the case. It's really easy to turn to those kind of fun social activities rather than sit in your room alone thinking about all the burdens that you're carrying.
Oh, they're good distractions for sure.
Yeah, and so guys are distracting themselves kind of sometimes into oblivion, and that compounds the problem. It doesn't alleviate anything because all of a sudden you're off on a tear, and that causes conflict with your partner at home, or you show up hungover to work. There's all kinds of conditions that arise out of that, and I really feel like that is a big part of how that develops, is that a man is not given that safe space where he can share what's really going on, and just someone to talk to, like, oh, this is rough, and I miss my kids, and I'm sad that I don't get to hear the first words, and I don't, and I'm not there for the first day of school, and if their partners allow them that time and that place and that safety to do that, then maybe they wouldn't need distraction. They wouldn't need, I don't know. I'm not accusing any stay-at-home or any partner at home of not being there for this. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I made the mistake of having heavy expectations on my husband and then also not emotionally supporting him because I didn't understand that's what he needed. I made a mistake.
But I would say you've been able to see that from both sides, which is, again, a very unique position to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that I've got to see both sides of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, Charis, one final question. There's been a lot of people not working right now for about a year and a bit. Do you have any words of encouragement and support for those people that are still hunting for a job and just they want to stay in the industry, they want to keep going, but they're struggling?
Oh gosh. I'll be really honest. Since I started working, aside from the time that I was in school, I've never actually sat. And I worked really, really hard. I developed a reputation of being a finisher. So when an employer hires me for something, I stay until they ask me to leave. So I've never left a job prematurely. I finish things. If I start something, I finish it. It doesn't matter if a job comes along that's $3 more an hour or a better shift. If I've said to company ABC, I am here until you no longer need me, that's it. That's it. And I've missed opportunities because of that, but I've also had some of the best experiences because I've refused to jump around. That's just been my strategy, and it's always kept me in work. For people who are looking or are not sure what direction to go, I would say lean really heavily on your industry contacts. My phone is full of industry contacts that I reach out to people on a regular basis and to see how they're doing and what they're up to. So I would say to those people, call your industry contacts, even if it's been a year or 2 years or 5 years since you've spoken to someone. Keep up those relationships. Not that you need to have full-blown, we go for lunch every Tuesday kind of relationships with everybody. That's exhausting, and you can't maintain that. But yeah, definitely maintain those contacts and be really clear about your motivation. You know, like, I want to stay working in industry, and you know, you worked with me 4 years ago, and it was a good experience, and I'm wondering if you can give me any leads, any direction, and just be your own advocate. Advocate for yourself, and continue to put yourself out there. You might be rejected 9 times, but that 10th time might be the one, right? Just if you want to stay in this industry, you got to put your elbows up and stay in this industry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I hope you'll consider coming back to talk to me again.
Yeah, that'd be great. This was really cool. Thank you.